Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, girl. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I really wanted to film a reading vlog because I love watching these types of videos and I thought it would be kind of fun to try out filming one. So this will be my first reading vlog. For this reading vlog, thinking about the next few books that I want to read, I definitely want to pick some things that are cozier, maybe like fantasy. Picked out my first book for the video. So my first book that I'll be reading in today's video is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I have already started this one and I'm about 100-ish pages in. So far, I don't have too many thoughts. The only thing that I'm thinking about this is it's a little bit of a slower pace so far. This is the first book of the Winter Night trilogy, so even just from that name, you kind of know that it's going to be very winter themed. It's set in Russia, and our main character and her family live in northern Russia, very remote, kind of cut off from a lot of the rest of civilization. Magic is not super prevalent in this world. It is set in our world. The magical element here is like folk tales. I am not sure if the author based it on Russian folk tales, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did because there's a very heavy theme and heavy prevalence of folk tales and folk stories in this book, which I'm enjoying a lot. So far, from what I've read, we're following our main character as she is growing up. That's like one thing I'm having a little bit of a hard time with is it's very slow paced so far. Again, I'm only about a third of the way through, but it's very slow paced so far. We follow our main character from when she's born. I don't know how old she'll get in this first book, but at the point I'm at now, she's like 6 or 8 years old. So we follow a few different events that happen throughout her childhood. We do skip ahead in time a few times, but you are spending quite a bit of time with our main character in the beginning parts. And her mother dies when she is born, so her mom's not there anymore. She has like a nurse kind of nanny who looks after her, and this lady, she's like a little bit older. She's the one that tells our main character Vasilisa and her siblings all these Russian folk tales. One of the magical things in this book is the families in this village that Vasilisa and her family live in. They give honor to these spirits that protect their homes. Even though they are folk tales, we're kind of given the knowledge that these folk tales might have some semblance of truth in this world. So that's the fantasy magical part of this. So they give food and certain things like that to the creatures that protect their homes. There's a bunch of different ones. They can't see them, but they just know that they're there. Our main character, Vasilisa, is one of the only people that can see these beings. And we already know from the beginning, based on this and a few other traits that she has, that she's going to be a little bit different. Different than everyone else, and she might have some sort of magic. So yeah, I would say this book feels, again, the winter element is really heavy, which I'm really liking. It's super atmospheric. I like the folk stuff as well. I like a folky type of fantasy. The only thing I'm not really loving so far is how slow paced it feels at the beginning. I'm trying not to judge it too much because again, I am only about a third through. So we'll see how much I like the rest of it. I'll keep you guys updated, but yeah, so far it's good. I like a lot of the elements of it. Oh, another thing I want to mention that I really am loving is our main character. Again, she's young, so I want to see how she develops a little bit more throughout the story, but so far I'm really liking her character. I think she's very strong. Even as a young child, you can see her strength and her bravery, and I really like that, especially in a like main fantasy character. Those things are really important to me. So yeah, I'm liking those parts of this book. And it is good. I'll see how I feel by the end of it, but I don't know where the plot's gonna go, so I'm interested to find out, but it's definitely a slower paced fantasy at this point. But it's still really good. So definitely enjoying it and really looking forward to seeing how it continues. Okay, so this morning you saw that I was reading The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I wanted to hop in here quick because I just got back from the bookstore and I found a book I have never heard of before, and I just wanted to update you guys that I think I'm going to stop reading The Bear and the Nightingale just like super briefly, and I want to read this book instead. And this book, again, I've never heard of it before. It's a graphic novel. It's called Castle Swimmer by Wendy Martin, and it says it's volume 1, so I assume this is going to be a series. Anyways, yeah, I've never heard of this before, but I was looking for the second volume of Lore Olympus, but I happened to find this as well, and I'm really intrigued by this. It's about two mermen who reject their destinies and embark on an adventure as big and unpredictable as the ocean itself, and a romance that nobody could have predicted. So it has a romance in it too, and it's obviously about mer people, so it's like fantasy. It sounds really good, so I really want to pick this up and read this next. So again, I'm about halfway through The Bear and the Nightingale, and I'm not putting it down for good, but I want to take a break just to read The Castle Swimmer because it won't take me too long. Again, it is a graphic novel, so I just wanted to hop on here and update you guys that the next clips you see will probably be me reading this, so don't be surprised. I will be continuing on with The Bear and the Nightingale, but after a very brief intermission, and I'm super excited to let you guys know what I think of this book. So yeah, I'll come back and tell you my thoughts. Hey guys, I just wanted to hop in here to give you a reading update because I have one. The last time we chatted, I told you that I was taking a break from The Bear and the Nightingale just very briefly, and I ended up finishing The Castle Swimmer that night. I loved this so much. I'm fairly new to graphic novels. Basically, I've only started reading them this year, and I've only read the Heartstopper books, so I'm interested in reading more graphic novels, obviously, because I've really enjoyed the Heartstopper books. And this one I had not heard anything about. I just happened to see it at the bookstore. I just picked it up on a whim, and it is so good. So this is only volume 1, and I looked it up. This just came out in October, and volume 2 is supposed to come out June of next year. So now I'm so excited for volume 2 to come out. And we're basically following our main character. His name is Kappa, and he is born, he's like a mermaid of sorts. And he is born as the Beacon, and basically what the Beacon does is he is a vital component in granting prophecies like all across the ocean. So different groups of beings in the ocean have different prophecies associated with them and the group that they're a part of. And the Beacon basically is an essential part of most of those prophecies, and most of the time he's used in like a positive way for this prophecy, to fulfill this prophecy. And basically what happens is he just kind of swims through the ocean on his own, and when he passes by like a colony or, you know, kind of like cities where these groups live, if they have a prophecy that's associated with him, he has this like pull to that place, and he isn't able to leave until the prophecy has been fulfilled. So we meet him when he is first born, and then I think it's about 20 years later or something, he is swimming by this, not a castle, but like a colony, group of beings that live in this colony that he passes by. They are called the Sharks, and they have a prophecy associated with him as well. Basically, he gets pulled to this place, and he's not able to leave until the prophecy is completed, and the prince of their group is meant to fulfill this prophecy with Kappa. The prince's name is Siren. So you meet the two of them, they're like around the same age, and you see what happens from there. And it was just so good. It was so cute. It reminded me a lot of Heartstopper in certain ways. I don't know if this is young adult or not. It wasn't in the young adult section in my bookstore, but I think the characters are like 20 or so, 21. So I don't think it's young adult. I could be wrong, I'm not sure, but it's definitely like kind of fantasy-esque because they are like living in the ocean. They're not all like mermaids, how he is, but they're all ocean creatures of different types. And yeah, it was super fun. Again, I've only read volume 1, but it's so good. I would highly recommend, especially if you've loved Heartstopper. This gave me very similar feelings to Heartstopper. I just loved it so much. Yeah, it was just so good. I ended up giving this one a 4-star. I don't really know how to rate graphic novels, to be honest. I've given all the Heartstopper books 4 stars so far, and I've loved all of them. They just like don't necessarily feel like 5 stars. And like, to be honest, again, it's hard to compare because Heartstopper, there's 5 books out. This one, there's only 1, but I really liked this. Depending on how the series goes, I could like this even more than Heartstopper. It's really so good. And I'm not sure how many volumes there are going to be in this, but I would assume quite a few. So I loved this so much. Could not recommend it enough. It was incredible. So yeah, if you loved Heartstopper, please check this out. I think you'll love it too. It was just so good. Okay, so I finished Castle Swimmer, and I ended up picking up The Bear and the Nightingale again. I am not quite finished with this one yet, but I am about 200 pages in, I think. I'm not sure. I think like 2/3 of the way through. So I've read a little bit more, about 100 pages more since the last time we talked. And the last time we talked about this one, I was about 100 pages in, and I was saying it was going pretty slowly and I wasn't sure yet how I felt about it. I don't feel that way anymore. I will say this book is only 300 and something pages long, so it's not super long. And it did take me almost until the 50% mark to actually really get into the story. It was pretty slow. It was pretty slow for me at the beginning, and I understand why we needed to build up this backstory. I don't know if we needed to build it up that much, but now that I'm in it, I'm really invested. I am obsessed with our main character, Vasilisa. I love her so much. I think she's an amazing main character for a fantasy book. And this is a trilogy, by the way. This is the first book in a trilogy. So I'm very excited to see after this book what happens to her through the next few books. But she's awesome. I love her so much. She's one of my favorite parts of this book. My other favorite part of this book is the folk aspect of it. I still am really enjoying that. We've gotten a lot more of these like folky creatures. We've met a few of them. And again, I told you Vasilisa has this ability to see them when no one else really can. And we get introduced to a bunch of different ones by her throughout the first 200-ish pages of this book. And it's just like so fun. All of these characters are so unique and different in their own ways. And yeah, it's super cool to read about that and to see how they all play a part in this like world. The winter aspect is still very strong, which is perfect because it's been snowing here for like 5 days. So that has been awesome. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how this one ends. I think I'm really going to enjoy it. 100 pages ago, I was like, this is going to be a 3-star read. Now it's definitely bumped up a little bit. Don't know for sure what I'm going to rate it yet, obviously, but so far I'm really loving it. So I'll be continuing this. Never gave you guys my thoughts on The Bear and the Nightingale. I just finished this one yesterday, and the last couple times I talked to you, the first time I was saying it was pretty slow, and then the second time I was saying it was picking up and I was enjoying certain elements of it, and that definitely remained true for the rest of the book. It was, honestly, for me, it was very slow for the first 50-ish%, but by the 50-ish%, it really started to pick up, and by the last few chapters, probably the last like 50 to 75 pages, I was super hooked and like could not stop reading. So I have conflicting thoughts though, because the first 50% was so slow, it was almost a struggle to get through it. So for me, and after having read the whole book, I don't think it was necessary to have it be as slow paced as it was. It follows, like I've mentioned, our main character Vasilisa through her childhood in the first half, and I definitely don't think we needed to go as in-depth as we did into certain things that happened in her childhood. I think having it more condensed, I think would have flowed a lot better, because it felt pretty choppy at some points, because we would go from her being like 8 years old to her being like 12, and it felt sort of random the way that time was moving in the beginning. For the last half of the book, it was, a linear timeline, and we were just following, the events as they were occurring. There weren't massive time jumps. So I think that there was certain parts that could have been condensed in the first bit of the book, but in saying that, it does give you setup for the rest of it, and I did really enjoy the rest of it. And you definitely need some of the childhood background in order to understand things that are happening when you get to the present timeline. So that was really good, but yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this book. My thoughts have stayed pretty much the same as the last time I talked. I really like the folky elements, and those become even stronger. We meet another character in the last bit of the book, and I loved him so much, and I think he's going to be part of the next 2 books. I would not be surprised if there was a romance in the next 2 books somewhere. But I loved his character. Him and Vasilisa, our main character, were my 2 favorite characters of the book. They were awesome. So I really liked that. I still loved Vasilisa. I think she's such an incredible main character. I was just so fascinated by her and her growth, and everything she did, I was just so fascinated by. So that was super fun. The setting also was awesome. It was super wintry, super snowy and remote and isolated, and that's perfect for the wintertime. If you're gonna pick up a fantasy book this winter, like, this series is definitely perfect. I'll for sure be continuing on. I'm super interested to see how the next one goes, because the way this ended off, I think there's a lot that could happen in the second one, so I'm super interested to see what happens. I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars, just because how slow paced it was in the beginning. I was like not invested in the story until like 50% through, so I could not give this more than that. Definitely worth it. And they are fairly short books. Like, even the rest of the trilogy, the books are not super long, so it's not a huge commitment. Like, you're not starting a massive 8-book fantasy series that are like 500 plus pages each. It's not a huge commitment. I think it's definitely worth it. So yeah, would highly recommend it. It was great. And now let's get back to reading. For my last book of this video, I really want to read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This will be a reread for me. I read this book probably 7 years ago now, and I remember enjoying it at the time, but I don't really remember that much else about it. And it's a book that I feel like could be a 5-star read for me. Just everything about it really appeals to me and is basically exactly my taste in books. So I'm very interested to see, upon a reread, how much more I enjoy it. I didn't even rate it at the time. This was like before I even rated books, so I don't remember how I felt about it. I read it in high school, so my taste in reading has changed quite a bit since then. So yeah, I really want to see if I still like this book or what I think about it now, because yeah, Erin Morgenstern is one of those authors. I know she only has a couple books out, but she's one of those authors that I feel like could be my favorite author, one of my favorite authors, if I, was really immersed in her books. So that's why I want to give this a reread. People love this book, and I am hoping I'm one of them too. So I remember certain elements of it, but I don't remember a ton about it. And it's one of those books I think is best to go into blind. So like, I have read the back, but it doesn't really tell you much. I think the back of the book does a really good job of describing what the story's about, but it is one I think you should go into knowing as little as possible about this magical, mysterious circus, and about these 2 magicians that are competing against each other unknowingly. It just sounds super cool to me. It sounds like something I'd love, and I know it's going to be very atmospheric, which I love for this time of year. And I really think this could be a new favorite for me. So I'm hoping that I love this a lot. So I started reading it already, but I'm only 60 pages in. So it's, I think, like 500 pages or something. It's fairly long. We'll see how long it takes me to read this one, but this will be the last book I read in this video, and I'll come back and let you know my thoughts when I'm a little bit further into it. Hey guys! I wanted to give an update because I realized I have not talked about The Night Circus at all since I started reading it, and I am a really good chunk of the way through. This is all I have left, so I figured it was time for an update. I have been going back and forth reading this physical copy and then also listening to the audiobook, which I'm really enjoying. If you are interested in this book, I would highly recommend the audiobook. It's super immersive because this book is really atmospheric and magical. The audiobook does a great job of illustrating that, I think. Reading it physically is also really great, but yeah, the audiobook, there's something about it that I'm really enjoying. But I think I'll probably read most of the rest of this, if not all of the rest of this, physically. So before I finish it, which I'm hoping to do today, I wanted to give you an update on my thoughts so far and what I'm thinking. And I know in the first clip that I talked about this book in, I said I think this is the type of book that's best to go in not really knowing that much, and I still think that that's true, but I did want to give a bit more insight into what this book is actually about now that I have read a good chunk of it, and specifically talk about my thoughts so far. I know that this book is about a circus that just appears all over the world. It travels across the world. No notice is given. It just shows up in towns and cities across the globe. Book spans a really, really long period of time, spans about 30 years. So a lot of stuff happens. The chapters kind of go back and forward in time, and you're following quite a few different characters. However, I haven't found it confusing, like going back and forth in whose perspective we're in and stuff. I haven't found that confusing at all, and I found it really interesting. You're seeing a bunch of different characters that have a role to play in the circus, as well as people that are just visitors of the circus. So you're getting a range of perspectives, and it's really interesting. Things that I'm loving about this book are it's extremely magical, like I've already said, and extremely atmospheric. Those are some of my favorite things about books, and I love books like this that kind of span a few different genres, because while there is magic in this, it doesn't feel like a fantasy book. Like, it still feels like it's rooted in reality, and it reads like a literary fiction in my opinion, just with those magical elements. But those are my favorite types of books, so I'm really enjoying that part of this. There's a romance in this as well. That is something I'm not sold on. It's pretty slow paced throughout the whole book. That's not to say that it's boring, because I'm not finding it boring at all. I just think it is really slow paced. Like, you will spend a lot of time on small things and smaller, more mundane situations. You'll spend a lot of time on those. Again, it's all for a reason. If you go into this expecting it to be really action-packed, it's just not like that. And as for the romance, because the timeline is interesting, like it flashes back and forth in time, we don't spend too long on any of these time periods. It will be in August 1888, and then the next time we're in the past timeline will be in September 1889, so we'll have already skipped forward a year. So we miss a lot of things that happen in those time periods, and specifically with the romance, it just kind of developed very suddenly for us as readers, and I personally did not get the chance to buy into this romance or to really feel like these characters have something between them, so that I'm not super sold on. But I wouldn't say the romance is like the main part of the book. It is a pretty big part in the last like half of the book, but it still isn't like the most important thing that's going on. The circus and the mystery surrounding the circus is still the main point of the book, and I'm really enjoying that. The circus is such a cool setting. There's like so many moving parts, this mystery that's starting to unravel that's been going on through the whole book. So you're starting to piece together what's been going on, and it's really fascinating. So yeah, there's a few things that I'm not obsessed with about this book, but overall, like the concept, the writing style is super lyrical, super flowery. I really like that. The romance I'm not obsessed with, and I think that the time jumps, sometimes they work and sometimes they make a lot of sense, and other times it just doesn't. So far, I'm still really enjoying it, and I'm very excited to see how it ends. I think that'll make or break this for me. So let's do a final wrap up. I listened to about half of this on audio and then read the rest of it, and that was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. A reread for me, but again, it felt like I was reading it for the first time because I haven't read it in like 7 years. That was the first time I read it back in high school. So it did kind of feel like I was reading it for the first time again, which was great. But I didn't know what to expect with this one. I remembered parts of it, but I didn't remember in great detail much about this book at all. I ended up really enjoying this one. This is one, I don't want to tell you too much about it because I think it's the perfect book to go into really not knowing anything. I will just say, yes, you follow this circus, and the circus is the main setting of the story and almost acts like a separate character of the story. It's so important to the rest of the plot. And the circus was probably my favorite part of the story. I just loved the atmosphere of it so much. It's described so beautifully. There's like different tents that are themed differently, and you're so immersed in that. It's super magical, and I really loved that part of it. I gave this book like a 4.5, 4.75 stars because I loved it. The writing was beautiful. Story was really interesting, and again, the setting of the circus was just like so unique to me, and I've really read nothing like that before. The reason I couldn't give this a 5-star was because I had a few issues with it. There is a romance in this, and I think this is marketed as like a fantasy romance, or at least that romance is a main part of it, and I would agree with that, but I personally just didn't buy into the romance that much. I found it difficult to really feel the romance between the two main characters because it literally felt like one chapter. They like barely knew each other, and then the next chapter, which is like a few years in the future, we're expected to just believe that they're now in love with each other. Like, I just didn't buy into it. And so these two main characters that are supposed to be in a romance with each other, they're in this competition. They're two magicians that are in a competition with one another, and yeah, we're supposed to believe that they are in love because the competition like ties them together in this really unique way, which like, yeah, sure, I'll believe that. But you're just telling me that they're supposed to be in love. I'm not seeing that they're actually in love. And there was basically nothing to show me that they were actually in love with each other. So the romance I didn't like. And the ending I was slightly disappointed in. Just slightly. It wasn't enough to really drop my rating that much or to ruin the book for me, but it was like mildly underwhelming for me. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Like, the setting is great. Again, like I said, my favorite part of the book. Without the circus, this probably wouldn't have been rated as highly. Very slow paced, but I was never bored. I enjoy a slow paced book every so often. And this, to me, yes, it felt slow paced, but I also was very interested in what was going on. So I really liked that. Yeah, overall, this was a really solid book to me. And I wouldn't say like, yes, it's fantasy because, you know, there's this magic circus and these magicians, but it very much is rooted in our world. So I would say it's more of a literary fiction with magical elements and romance elements. So yeah, I don't know. The cast of characters is very wide as well, and I really liked a lot of the other side characters. They were all really interesting, and I thought they were all fleshed out really well. Again, the romance was just the weakest part to me. I just didn't buy into it, but besides that, I loved the rest of it. So again, 4.5, 4.75. Really, really solid book. I just had a few issues that couldn't bump it up to a 5-star for me. But yeah, those are all of the books that I read for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and this was really fun to film. Again, my first reading vlog, and I had a really good time filming it. So let me know if you liked it, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my next video.